Oh, yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen. There we have it back. Hi. So my name's Liam Young. I'm a speculative architect. What that means is I don't design buildings, but rather I work between documentary and fiction to tell stories about the global, urban, and architectural implications of new technologies. So in the work, we borrow from techniques of fiction, film, and performance to collect and visualize stories of landscapes and cities, both real and imagined, in order to engage audiences with the strange ways that technology is changing our world. So we often cite our work within the distributed geologies of the Anthropocene, a geological epoch where technology is the dominant force shaping the world. And what we're going to do this afternoon is a live storytelling mix as we travel around to the dark side of our luminous screens to see the shadows cast by our glittering cities of technology. So this afternoon, what I'm going to do is narrate a series of stories and myths of the post-Anthropocene, a story of what comes next, a portrait of a place that's no longer made for us, but rather an ecology of machines that constitute a fictional city that for today we're going to call City Everywhere. It's a landscape, it's a world that's endlessly remade, reshaped, and engineered by and through and for all of our technologies. And in the landscapes of City Everywhere, there is no city and country, no center and periphery, but there's just a continuous city of technology that's stretched across the planet. Today is an atlas of geographies and gadgets and objects that will come together to form a portrait of this emerging city. It's a kind of city symphony that's stitched together from documentary footage of real sites that we've visited with our nomadic research studio, Unknown Fields, and short fragments of speculative film projects that I develop out of them with my own urban futures think tank, Tomorrow's Thoughts Today. And then to see this city everywhere, we're going to jump into the back seat of a driverless taxi, and we're going to go out on safari. And we're going to follow a city operating system that's sitting beside us and riding shotgun. And we'll travel through this atlas of sites and structures, sites of this planetary scaled city where nothing has escaped. And we'll trace their edges, their glitches and anomalies to see where these often invisible machines bubble to the surface to condense into the landscapes, the architectures and the natures of our emerging world.
At north on Wellington Road. Starting route to GU2 7XX.
So here we are in our driverless taxi, and the smart city is sitting beside us, and it smells of hard drives and fiber optics and Red Bull soda. And as we keep on driving, the electric motor hums and we rumble on quietly. And the city has invited us on this road trip across its technological skin, and it's looking forward to showing us around to visit the sites and structures made for and by its machines. Sites of this planetary scaled city where nothing has escaped. And we're going to start this atlas on the edges of the city to see where our contemporary technologies begin their lives and then travel into the city center. And here, to begin, the city takes us to the beginning of the beginning, where seconds from zero, 13.8 billion years ago, the creation story of lithium begins, a fundamental component in all of our technologies. From the spark of the Big Bang to the flicker of an electron jumping from the battery in our phone, it was there at the dawn of time. And in this vast cloud of swirling cosmic matter, gravity and violent collapse, the sphere of the Earth was formed, and embedded within its surface was traces of this metal lithium. And now we drive along the azure shores of the city's energy pools, through Chile and Bolivia, a land that's no longer of an indigenous population, but of evaporation ponds of the world's largest lithium mines. And this is the landscape that is behind the scenes of all the batteries that power our technology. So 70% of the world's lithium is buried here. And you can't see it on the desperately flat horizon or access it by any public road. Its mystery is protected by its isolation. And through the eyes of a drone, we see our technology splayed out before us. Because lithium development is not mining done through extraction, but rather through evaporation. And a tessellated ocean of evaporation ponds lays out before us, where each shift in hue signals a rising concentration of lithium salts. And from above, the earth comes alive with the colors of lithium electricity. And on a stage in California, Elon Musk, the tech evangelist and entrepreneur, proclaims his vision for a green future, a world where everything will be solar in 20 years. But like most Silicon Valley preachers, he's presenting a seductive future, a hopeful future, but at the same time, it's a decidedly uncomplicated one. And now, Elon Musk must literally buy Bolivia and develop it as the new Dubai. Because if the future is electric, if the future is Elon Musk and his Tesla-fueled dreams, then the future is buried here, beneath the salt flats of Bolivia. And as we drive on, we see from a clearing in the point cloud mist the cavernous landscapes of our ephemeral technologies. And it's in these massive mining excavations that are scattered on the edge of the world that our city everywhere begins and ends its life. And we each have a bit of the gold and aluminium from these sites tucked away in our pockets, charged and quietly vibrating. And in the landscapes of Australia, Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives speak of a time when the ground was soft and creation beings shaped mountains and rivers, when the rainbow serpent slinked across the ground to create a river and a wild dog came to rest to form a mountain. And now as the lights of the city wash out the sky, these songlines are now sung anew with the tracks laid down by the beasts of the mining industry. And the dreaming landscape that embodies the creation stories of Aboriginal Australians is overlaid with a vast infrastructure of resource speculation and financial fictions. And geological survey planes track back and forth, laser scanning the earth, searching for topographic anomalies that indicate pockets of undiscovered minerals in the ground. And these digital models of the landscape is now linked live to fluctuations of metal prices on the stock market. So as explosive diggers and drills replace the slow erosion of rivers and earthquakes, we see that we're scoring our economy into the archaeological record. It's a chronicle of the digital permutations that now drive the modern world. And in the landscapes, we see vehicles just like the taxi that we're driving through that no longer have drivers, but that are just systems, and mining trucks rumble up mountains, and tractors carve soil based along GPS trails generated by the city's orbiting bodies above. And now we drive deeper into the dust, and we see the rhythms of the human conveyor belts in Madagascar. This is one of the planet's most precious ecological treasures, but it's also home to one of its poorest nations. And here it raises difficult questions about the relationship between necessity, luxury, and technology. And as the beat drops and stage lights strobe and a pop star flashes their designer bling for the camera, another world away, in a hole in the ground in the Wild West mining town of Ilikaka, another choreography of bodies move in rhythm to dig dirt by hand out of a gemstone mine. So 90% of the world's sapphires are pulled out of the ground from the human conveyor belts of Madagascar's gem fields. And for such a remote island that contains an extraordinary amount of high-value resources. Precious gems was deposited here by an ancient river that once flowed across Africa before a tectonic shift ripped it from the mainland to form the island of Madagascar. And the stones collected in a pocket along the twists and turns of the riverbed, resting patiently beneath 20 meters of sand and this future mining boomtown. And hidden amongst political uncertainty, the island's fragile and unique ecology is now being smuggled out illegally, boat by boat, gem by gem. And rare tortoises leave in rucksacks, and forests are carved into $1 million rosewood beds to be sold in China, and precious stones are shoveled from the earth and smuggled onto the stage in pop star bling. And these digging machines excavate the majority of the world's gemstones. And in these illegal mines, it's cheaper to pay 20 men in rice than it is to maintain and fuel its mechanical conveyor belts. And a hidden black market supply chain now connects these two choreographies from the lawless mine sites all the way across the ocean to the jewelry stores, hip-hop music videos, and celebrity red carpets. And for our jewelry in City Everywhere, we've used the amount of rice the human conveyor belt consumes in a day to manufacture a single synthetic gemstone. A gemstone that embodies the systems through which these worlds are intimately and profoundly connected. And the red Madagascan rice grown endemically on this treasured island is a staple food source of the miners, and it's been collected locally and shipped to gem specialists for carbon analysis. And by subjecting it to extreme heat and pressure in the lab, we're able to form this synthetic stone encoded with the sum of the human conveyor belt's labor. And after manufacture, the gemstone has been set into a gold tooth, ready for that $1 million smile and the outrageous lyric. From kilojoules to carats to the nightclub, in the glare of this cheeky gold grin, we see the cost of luxury, of beauty, of the daily allowance of rice, of 20 men shoveling at the bottom of a hole. It glistens, and in the mirrored facets of the rice diamond, we see ourselves. And after Madagascar, we leave it behind and we jump back in our taxi. And we follow the breadcrumbs of technology, and we arrive at a village organized around metals and hardware components. And here we see another group of villagers buried not by soil, but by the collected piles of e-waste gathered in their houses. So these mines of discarded technology surround their living, sleeping, and eating spaces. And they mine their domestic landscapes for lead, germanium, gallium, tin, nickel, and copper. And now next to the pot of noodles simmers the acid bath, dissolving circuit wafers and flavoring soup. And close by, our driverless taxi rolls up to the shores of the radioactive lake in Inner Mongolia that sits beside the world's largest rare earth mineral refinery. And we take a selfie with our phones, and we see our reflection in the mirrored screen, because the material to polish its glass and run its software produces this very lake. And collapsed together in this single luminous surface, we see ourselves and this black, black earth. And from this black sludge, we've made a vase for the city to thank it for its tour. It's a set of vases made from the amount of waste created in the production of 3 objects: an iPhone, a MacBook, and a Tesla electric car battery. It's a new material aesthetic for technologies born of the earth. It's a Ming vase for the city everywhere generation. And now the city takes us to where all these raw materials are refined and shaped into the familiar objects that fill our lives. Almost all the world's Christmas decorations are made just around the corner. That tree lighting up your lounge, those direct decorations hanging from the ceiling, are all made by these human machines of the city that are orchestrated around efficiency algorithms. In the post-Anthropocene, these are the real robots of our new landscapes of technology, where the body is matched in speed to the conveyor belts that turn in front of it. And here we find 90% of the world's electronics. We brand our technologies with terms like cloud, air, and featherweight, but in reality they're violently wrenched from the earth. And as our personal electronics tend towards the invisible, they conjure in their shadows an undeniably visible grey mountain, a 1 kilometre deep pit, a 10 square kilometre radioactive tailings lake, all a counterweight to the apparent immateriality of computing, communications, and electric energy. And in City Everywhere, the infrastructures of the digital world have these extraordinary implications on material experience. These are the architectures behind the screen and beyond the fog of the smart city cloud. These are the physical outputs of our digital engagement with the world. But could we imagine redesigning our gadgets not based on how they might slide into our pocket or feel in our hand, but for the networks they set in motion, or the economic resources they might distribute? What could the alternative design criteria for a supply chain be if it wasn't engineered around cheap labor costs and material availability? What would it mean if the design of objects and the design of landscapes became collapsed together into one single move? Because as we keep moving in the same area of the city, we see a model pout, and the whip of a hip catches the eye on the catwalk, and we see fast fashion's rolling tide dumping mountains of cheap clothing on the high street shores, objects of desire, worn for one wild night and destined to be discarded. And now we pick at a loose thread on the garment we're wearing and we unravel it across continents, from wardrobe to warehouse, from factory to field, in search of the landscapes behind our runway dreams and street blue jeans. Because before we wear them, our clothes make journeys of 10,000 miles in their process of production, making textiles the most globalized industry on the planet. And the byproduct of the pace and scale of production is the destruction of the very thing that brought the industry to the Southeast Asia originally. And here on our tour through City Everywhere, we now meet the last generation of master weavers, a group whose skills now die with them. The apprentices they would once train now man the rumbling, mechanized looms of global fashion, raw cotton plugging their ears, deaf to the din of the world around them. And we visit the last gold thread maker, an alchemist, lovingly tweaking the machine his grandfather made, resisting the move to synthetic, cheap and fake cotton used by all the other companies around him. And spanning from fashion victims to victims of fashion for the cloth of City Everywhere, we now weave a collaborative textile with the last gold thread maker and one of the last true master weavers in Varanasi. And audio from a series of these interviews with these endangered craftspeople and the sound of their looms is translated into this binary pattern and woven into the cloth. And the textile becomes an archive, encoded with the skills and stories of a dying craft and woven from the same hands it's trying to remember. And to make the thread for the textile, we follow the container ships that bring fast fashion to our shores all the way to their death, where after their 25-year lifespan, they return to India and Bangladesh to be broken up and salvaged in the shipbreaking yards. And we collected fragments of this raw steel from the Bangladeshi shores, cut from the rusting carcasses of the dead ships to form the core of the gold thread. It's a textile archive born from the skeletons of the industry that brought it into being. And this cloth covers a young Indian textile worker walking slowly on a sacred procession, walking slowly from her home village amongst the cotton fields to the huge mills and factories of the vast textile industry where she now works. And as she walks across city everywhere, she's gradually wrapped in the glistening gold textile, a textile that bears witness to a series of transformations, weaving, dyeing, sewing, and pressing. And her journey suggests the walk along the fashion catwalk and the path of our disposable fashion that takes across its global production supply chain, and the path so many women like her have taken in moving from village to factory to city. And her journey ends as she's completely cocooned and standing at the edge of the huge container port amongst the mega container ships that will soon export her all the way to the west. Because this city everywhere cannot be described as a single point on a map. How technologies cast shadows that stretch across the earth. And we pack up all the objects and materials produced in these sites and we send them off in ships around the world. This is the computer-controlled container fleet of the mega shipping industry that now navigates autonomously based on GPS satellites. And the ship captain and the portside crane operators have also been made obsolete. And around the soon-to-be busiest shipping lane on the planet, we see the grand supply chains of the shipping industry being re-engineered as the Arctic coastline slowly melts. And here we see that this abandoned coastline is now filled with the unmanned beasts of global trade. We see a lone engineer and her dog head back from a maintenance run, like a lighthouse keeper, just her, the horizon, and the creaking cranes. Because like most of the other ports in the world, these landscapes are now increasingly and almost totally autonomous, and her body is repurposed as a component in the landscape-scaled robot that stacks the containers ready for transport, bringing our goods all the way home. And we keep on traveling, and the city tells us of a strange tale of a new landscape.
This is about the Sandy Island mystery that was in the Sydney Morning Herald. Sandy Island was actually found on Google Earth.
And just off the coast of the city is Sandy Island, a collection of dark pixels, GPS coordinates, hyperlinks, and stories. It's a landscape of the post-Anthropocene that was originally charted by the whaling ship Velocity back in 1876. But the island has long been what's called an evidence-doubtful landmass. Perhaps it was originally recorded to be a trap that might support a map's copyright, or a mislabeled pile of volcanically ejected hummus that was seen drifting on the horizon. But whatever it was, this cartographic apparition remained visible in the Google Earth models of City Everywhere until an Australian research vessel confirmed its non-existence during a 2012 expedition to survey the ocean floor. And up until that point, to a world of Google explorers and hyperlink adventurers, Sandy Island was just as real as any other place they visited online. And it raises the question that if the places and spaces that we inhabit exist solely in the mediums through which we experience them, then perhaps they become just as real as any physical site. Because when it's machines that do the looking, these digital geographies become new and occupiable territories. Geographies like this one, where our ship pulls up to the shores of the Amazon Fulfillment Center, and stretching out before us are its endless shelves and storage bins. This is where we keep, well, everything, says the city. And the Amazon bookshelves are stacked based on a complex sorting algorithm and engineered around sales frequencies and buying patterns. And we watch as Amazon robots rush through the stacks, navigating book from book to book, filling orders by following the most efficient route generated for them by their navigational programming. And this is the library of City Everywhere, not organized around the Dewey Decimal System, but by buying habits and aggregated data sets. And we follow the Amazon Prime drone that's zipping about above us, and it drops packages in an Amazon hailstorm. And drifting above this sea of neon haze, we see the drones have all become as ubiquitous as pigeons in this city. And we customize our drones like we once did our phones, and they follow us around, always with a smile and fluffy ears and 16mm propeller blades. And the air is filled with the digital confetti of our every desire, and the traffic lights flock at rush hour, and the rumble of drone propellers becomes a new natural soundscape for this city of a new generation. All the dogs in the city are walked by drones now, the city says. Think of the time saving, it smiles. They deliver our pizzas. And now a network of drones also monitor the wayward youth of a London council estate. And we watch through the eyes of the drones as a young girl has hacked and decorated her own drone and uses it to pass notes to her boyfriend trapped in the tower opposite. And like kids passing notes in an old-fashioned classroom, they scribble messages on the drone and they send it back and forth between the towers. And in this near-future city, drones form agents of state surveillance, but they also become co-opted as the aerial vehicles through which two teenagers might fall in love. And another drone, armed just with a dildo, disrupts the Russian parliamentary session. And another zips overhead, en route to attack a village in a country half a world away. And now we're getting closer to the sites of the city where we find ourselves. And our taxi takes us to the residential districts, to the Samsung Towers, and we put our ears to the cool beveled aluminium door of one of the apartments and we listen to the conversation inside. Through the door we hear Juri drop her Samsung Galaxy SX phone onto the kitchen table, and we hear it chime softly as it makes contact with the paper-thin Samsung Quiz Smart Power charging mat. And we hear her scream down the hallway at her husband, raising her voice over the Samsung air conditioner. "Why does the new TV say LG on it?" she says. "What do you mean?" he replies. "Because it's made by LG. What are you talking about?" "Are you trying to get us thrown out?" she screams. "Our lease is up for review in 3 months and you bought an LG TV into a Samsung housing block. What the hell are the neighbors gonna say?" she screams. And the city just shrugs. It glares at us with a million sensor eyes. It uses Apple and doesn't care for the tribulations of the Samsungese. And the fire department pushes past us, heading inside
got a rude awakening when
to
she
see one of
left
the
her
other
robot
apartments.
vacuum to do the cleaning while she took a nap. The vacuum cleaner reportedly mistook the woman for dust, locked onto her hair and tried to suck it up. The vacuum suction was far from gentle, and wrenched the woman from her slumber. The woman's hair then became entangled in the cleaning device. The woman, who has not been named, was unable to free herself and called the fire department with a desperate rescue plea.
The fire department was called after a robot vacuum cleaner attacked a sleeping owner's head. And in another apartment, Heinz was forced to apologize after a QR code on a ketchup bottle linked to a hardcore porn site. Daniel Correll scanned the label to read about the latest recipe promotion, but was instead directed to German porn site Fundorado. And now we keep on driving deeper, and our taxi heads into the beating, purring, and whirring heart of the city. And we drive along the aisles of the Facebook machines, past all of our messages, photos, inane chatter, hopes, dreams, and darkest desires. And the electric car motors here have given way to the whirl of cooling fans. And this isn't a grand cathedral, this isn't a great library, but at a time when our collective history is digital, this is our generation's cultural legacy. And we will soon write soliloquies for the server aisles, like we once did for rolling hills. And couples may steam up the car windows parked in the artificial moonlight of vast data complexes. And power plant fog hangs heavy in the air. And hidden within the server stacks, the city wants to take us to visit the renderlands and the data farms. And we drive through the Indian quarter of the city. And in the design studios of the West, architects and directors sketch out their designs for imaginary cities. While in India, across the other side of the planet, this massive anonymous workforce turn these wireframe worlds into the high-fidelity digital architectures and developer renderings, video games, and Hollywood blockbusters that we all know. And the city introduces us to Prakash, a render farm worker, who makes and shapes the digital worlds we all inhabit. And Prakash has fallen in love with the digital model of a beautiful Hollywood actress after spending 14 hours a day endlessly rotoscoping, rendering, and compositing her into blockbuster films. He has lovingly airbrushed across every pore on her face, every strand of her hair, and he models her in scene by scene, frame by frame, day by day, into film. And by night, when the fluorescents are switched off and everyone else has gone home, he straps on his VR goggles and they walk hand in hand through the streets of a city he's collaged together for them from scavenged VFX movie models and the leftover 3D game assets that remain on Indian studio hard drives. And the digital ephemera of popular culture fills our physical spaces, and we drift through a utopia that exists in the thickness of a screen. A virtual city that stretches from Los Angeles to Bangalore. A world of demolished landmarks, drowned cityscapes, alien invasions, digitally simulated actors, and our outsourced, pixel-projected dreams. And in a way, this is the physical world left behind when everything disappears into the thickness of the screen, the lens of Google Glass or Oculus Rift. Modern film studios are an analogy for the urban spaces of the city everywhere, filled with a new kind of architecture, a new type of ornament that's based on calibration crosshairs, targets, and machine vision, where a wall is stripped back to become the scaffolds and the infrastructure for a digitally constructed world. It's an architecture that's lying in wait, ready for the premiere of 1 million animated movies that will illuminate its surface with color and detail. In a way, this is what's behind the future that technology promises us.
A nightfall of diamonds.
Sparkles.
¿Cómo
You
está
can
John?
move the old-fashioned way. Century 21. John Anderton! You can use it right about now.
Escape from it all, Linda Lewis. Out, John Anderton.
Forget your troubles with Blue.
John Anderton.
So when we turn off this augmented world, when we turn off the bespoke billboards of minority reports, urban spaces, the tailored ads, the navigational prompts, the Tinder profiles and status updates of our sci-fi cityscapes, we'll see a green screen world where everything has become a screen. And as we keep on driving, we visit another apartment building, an augmented apartment, in an up-and-coming area of the city where the renderings on developer billboards have become the inhabitable utopias of AR-fueled gentrification. And we peer in through the window. We see an agent showing a client around a digital construction site. Here, the physical shell of the building has become a fixer-upper canvas, and building debris and unsightly neighbors are hidden behind the rendered glow of our digital imaginaries. And the occupation of space is now reimagined on personal and individual scales, where we are each tuned to our own architectural channel. The real estate agent asks, okay, so what were you thinking? As a Google image search box appears behind the door. Okay, well, we have lovely 21st century textures. Early Floyd, classic Tilco. Or for something really special, I can offer you one of our IKEA packs. Very eclectic, very tasteful, 100% uncustomized. The daybed winks out of existence to be replaced by a set of side tables in primary colors and a rectangular bookcase. Ooh, a lax, he exclaims, and a billy. He smiles. Ah, I can see that Sir is a connoisseur. And the agent taps some more buttons and a series of blonde wood and laminate objects start to appear around the space. A low Japanese-style bed overlays the couch, and he sinks down into it. His eyes gleamed over in a pixel glaze. And now we jump back in our taxi, and a dull roar fills the cabin as we drive, and I wind down a window, and in the distance we can hear an audience going crazy. Hatsune is a 3D projection with a larger fan base than most living musicians. She's the pop star of our generation, a pop star for the machine world. And the crowd waves their glow sticks for a digital ghost of the city. Hatsune is the first animated pop star, and just like the Kardashians, the Hiltons, and the vloggers, and the Instagram stars, she has no physical presence, but she's just a media construction, an agglomeration of pixels. And to the beat of Hatsune's hologram, the young ravers dance with explosive contortions as they invent a new choreography that distorts the silhouette of the body and disguises the proportions of their frame so as to evade body detection algorithms that are used by the city surveillance cameras. And they reimagine their fashion cycles to follow the rate of Moore's law, the latest phone model or software update rather than a change in season. And they adorn themselves in anti-facial recognition makeup. And they develop new camouflage textiles and a new hoodie that's designed to be invisible to the scanning technologies of the smart city. And their iridescent textiles reflect the light of CCTV laser scanners to create exuberant glitches, distortions, and disturbances in the dataset. And they hack the city, searching for the wilds beyond the machine. And back in our taxi, Hello World blinks on the dashboard display. Our journey is at an end and the system is rebooting. A Hello World program is a computer program that outputs Hello World as a system to verify that a language is operating correctly. It's the first word spoken by a new program. And Hello World burns onto the screen, announcing itself, telling us that everything is going to be just fine. And in a way, City Everywhere never gave us this warning. We aren't sure how it got here, but we certainly aren't going to let it leave. It's just too seductive, too shiny, and too easy. And in this city, we see that our technologies, our buildings, our spaces are formed from a planetary scaled machine, an infrastructure so large that it's become invisible. A machine so often disguised, ignored, or forgotten behind the gloss of the screen, the seamless aluminium edge, or the glare of the pixel. But in City Everywhere, ideology rarely evolves at the same pace as our technology. But here, if we can understand and map these systems, then perhaps we can begin to reimagine them, to conjure new stories, new mythologies, and new technologies for this new city. And my watch tells me about a coffee machine it just met. And the city wraps us in a warm embrace, and the LEDs blink and the cooling fans spin, and the streets are lined with sensors, and the electromagnetics hum, and it smells like it's gonna rain.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
And our faces are bright in the rolling glow of a rectangular screen aurora.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
And in the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. In the future, everything